We are back again. This time we're working in Photoshop. You should have downloaded both the program and your Chpt files by this time. We are working with lesson 1 in the Photoshop book. I have already started Photoshop and have it up and running, and as you can see, the layout of the program is very similar. All of your toolbars are going to be found in the same location. You've got your tools down the left-hand side of your screen, which you can actually take that, and if you want to change that, the view on that to be a double two column, you can. However, it takes up more room on your screen, so I would always suggest working with it this way unless you want to disconnect that and float it someplace else. Your panels, of course, are going to be all on the right-hand side, just like everything was in Illustrator. Again, your context menu across the top is going to be changing with your tools, and you will also have some information across the bottom that you can change. We'll go into that in a little bit. It's just very similar to what we were working with. The only difference that you might find is if you're working on a Mac, you can choose whether you're working within an application frame like this or without it, and that's your choice. That you can make that choice on that. Working on the Windows, I'm always going to look like this, so you will have this familiar screen set up. When you open your file, and I've already started opening it, this is the dialog box that you may see. I'm not opening the completed file. You can open that and look at it yourself. But this is the dialog box. I am going to use the embedded color profile instead of my working space because the embedded is the Adobe RGB. And with that, I'm going to say OK, and I am opening my beginning file. Notice that we have the same type of layers panel that we had before. We have choices again for which setup we're going to have. With the photography open, I have my adjustment panels. I have my navigator panel, which we can use to move around the screen. And you can see in the layers we have the ribbon that we're going to be working with and copying items from there to create a postcard. I have already talked about the toolbars and of course the option bars, but what I'm going to have you look at now is the status bar at the bottom of the work area, and I want you to notice that we have, first of all, the zoom percentage coming up right down here. And we also have the status bar. Now your status bar, you can actually select different items. This is telling you the size of your document. You can, however, change so that you can see different items. You can see your measurement scale, which will show you 1 pixel on screen equals 1,000 pixels. In actuality, we have document size, efficiency. Timing would, of course, would be something you would bring up for motion. You can select to show what your current tool is. You can select to show smart objects. We generally leave this on document size so that you can see what you're working with. We have the ability to zoom up to a 3,000%. Oh, that isn't what I was looking for. It's my error there. But with the zoom tool, you can zoom up and actually take this up. I've got this on Scrubby. With the Scrubby zoom, you can click and drag your mouse to the right to enlarge, and notice we can go up 3,200% of the original file. With Scrubby zoom up here, if you drag to the left with your mouse, click and drag to the left, you can zoom out. Shortcut key is pretty much the same if you want to grab the hand tool so you can slide around the image just to hold down your space bar, and you can use the double click on the zoom tool. You can hold down your alt button to take it to the minus when you click, or you can use the buttons up on top to select whether your default on the zoom is going to be increase or decrease. Page 15 will cover all of the ways that you can use the zoom tool. There is also zooming and scrolling with the navigator panel on page 16. You can use your navigator panel up here to slide around. You can zoom in and out using the navigator panel as well. So if you zoom out and you grab and slide this around, you can go to any place on the piece. It's a very nice way of maneuvering. So with that, we are continuing on now to page 17. On the layers panel on the right side of the workspace, make sure that your rows layer is selected, and we're going to add an adjustment layer. The first one is brightness contrast, and if you click on that to select it, it's going to bring open this panel, which is your brightness contrast panel. Notice that we have a new layer. We are adding adjustment layers right now. We are not making adjustments to the background image. We are adding a layer that contains the adjustment. If we take the brightness layer, or the brightness, and we slide this over to brighten the content up 98 steps of brightness or thereabouts, and bring up our contrast just a little bit, which is going to increase our darks, the image certainly brightens up. Very often the book is going to give you specific numbers to put in panels, but you can experiment with different values to see how they affect what you're doing. There is no right or wrong settings for these. The values you use depend on the results you want. So even though it may say that your brightness should be 98%, perhaps you like a slightly darker image, in which case you can leave your brightness down a little lower and bring the, maybe you want to bring the contrast up a little bit more than what they specify, because that is going to affect the darkness in the image and make that darker. So possibly by doing this, you can get a look that you like better. So for any of the projects that you're doing or any of the lessons that you're doing, please always feel free to experiment and use some slightly different settings, because your vision may be different than that of the people who created the book. There is no right or wrong on making choices of this nature unless there is something very specific that needs to be met in order to achieve a particular goal. Adjustment layers let you make changes to your image, like adjusting the brightness of the rose did. It doesn't affect the actual pixels because we are using the adjustment layer. I can turn off what I just did, and I am not making any change to this background image at all. Am only changing the view, and this is a very nice way because you can make different adjustments with different layers and make decisions later at which you want to use. You can also go back in, select the layer, and readjust because maybe you changed your mind. Okay? So you can go in at any point in time, even after you have saved the Photoshop file, you can go back in and readjust it. So for now, we're going to go to File and we're going to Save As. And again, we are going to use the name that they're giving us, but remember to include your initials so that I can sort out the files when I download them. So now we have our first Photoshop file saved. Next thing that we're going to do is sample a color. By default, The colors are just like in Illustrator. We had a default fill and stroke color. We have a default front and back color. You can change this. You can swap them by hitting the double-headed arrow here, and that will swap them back and forth. You can select the color and select a new one. For both the foreground and the background, you can pick up and use your color sliders and make different colors. Now, I am on the brightness contrast layer, which means that I'm only going to be able to do black and white because it comes up with a mask. We need to be on the rose layer in order to make the other changes. So let me do that. Come on. There and there. So that's how easy it is to change the colors. We're on page 18, and the first thing we need to do is display the ribbons layer so we can see the color that we want to sample. So click on the eye to make that visible. We have a ribbon that says happy birthday, and make sure that you have that ribbons layer as the active layer. You're not going to be able to work in the adjustment layer, and we do not want this on the rose layer. So we have our ribbon layer selected, and now go over, and if you would find and pick up your eyedropper, which I always seem to have trouble finding for some reason, but there are multiple tools available under the eyedropper. Make sure you have the eyedropper selected and click someplace in that blue area in the happy birthday ribbon, and you're going to take a sample of that color. And notice that there are different availabilities on the color here because of it being a texture. So you can actually work to find the color that you are particularly after. You can drag a little bit and you'll see how that changes as to which color you're getting, so you can have the lighter or the darker blue. We've made the selection now from the blue, and notice that now our foreground color has become whatever color it was that we had selected. And anything now that we draw will be in this color until we change the foreground color again.